listening to the Feral Ones podcast with your host, Amber Mohr, bringing you the wild stories of the most feral generation of them all, the generation that practically raised themselves, Gen X.
Welcome back to the Feral Ones podcast. I am your host, Amber Mohr. Today, I am delighted to have a local from my town, Nolensville, Tennessee, Russell Gill. Russell, welcome to the Feral Ones podcast.
Thank you, Miss Amber. It's a pleasure to be here.
Russell, what year were you born?
I was born in 1969. I'd like to claim that Bryan Adams wrote a song about the summer I was born, but
Summer of '69. That's a great song. So you're one of the elder Gen X's.
Yes, ma'am.
If there were such a thing. I often hear millennials refer to themselves as the elder millennials, that they're closer to being Gen X than really the millennial generation. So you are the elder Gen X. How often do you get referred to as a boomer?
It has only begun to be referred to me as a boomer in the past year or two.
Okay.
And that's by folks who are, I don't think they're quite millennial any longer. Now they believe they would be Generation Z or maybe even Generation Alpha. But
Yeah.
not in a negative sense, more like having fun. But part of that may be because even at 55 years old, I still consider myself somewhat young. And I teach the 18 plus college Bible study at my church. And as a result of that, I'm around young people all the time. And sometimes they consider me that proverbial boomer, and sometimes they don't. But I've heard it a couple of times in the past year or two. Otherwise, I'm more than happy to continue to be branded Generation X. And yes, I guess Generation X began when in 1965, I believe it is. Is that right?
Yes, I think 65 or 66. You know,
Yes.
there's no perfection in how they define the generations. It's like a range, right? To 1980, 81-ish. But yeah, so I like to tease my children and be like, gentle. I was born in the 1900s.
Well, we were born when the day that and this is a joke, it's not a Russell Gill original, and so I don't want to take it as my own, okay? But I cannot for the life of me remember the comedian that made the joke. Maybe before the end of the podcast, I'll recall it. I'll give him proper credit. But we were born in the generation when if it was a night that the president was speaking on TV, your night was shot because he was on all three channels, right?
Oh, yeah. Every channel. Oh, that was so depressing. It was depressing as a kid. It was just like, oh my gosh, the president's on the TV again. I can't watch anything. I forgot
what
about
you
that.
want to watch tonight, the president's taking over. And I wish I could remember which comedian said that. Your night was shot. I don't remember who it was, but that's my generation. Our children have no idea what that is like. And I think perhaps the best illustration of that I can offer, Amber, is this. Saturday evening, my beautiful bride, who is on the very back end of Generation X, by the way, is born in 79. My beautiful bride and I and our two children went to a wedding down near our hometown of a young man who I was there the day he was born. His family is like family to mine. And it just happened to be on the third Saturday in October, which if you're a fan of the University of Tennessee Volunteers or
Wait.
I guess you are. Fantastic. There you go. You know what third Saturday in October means. It's when we play Alabama. But we were not going to miss this young man's wedding to his beautiful new bride because of a ball game. So we went down to it. But my son at the wedding reception, I asked him, I said, listen, keep the phone turned off and in your pocket until we get to the reception, not during the wedding. And sure enough, when the reception started, he fired up the phone and he was able to log on to YouTube TV and watch the football game live and in person. That would have never been possible in our world. Ever.
No.
But what was interesting, Amber, is there were pockets of people all around the reception hall
doing the same thing.
We were trying to certainly love on the happy couple. They were making their way around, shaking hands, getting pictures taken, getting love and all that. But no doubt about it, when UT intercepted that ball, you could hear a cheer go up all around. And then finally, everybody paid nothing but attention to the happy couple. But that's part of the story. But it just illustrates how technology has changed and was totally different from when you and I were kids.
Yeah, they could have been like trying to get the bride and groom to kiss to distract the cheers of the game. But now, so this bride and groom, were they from Tennessee? I mean, they planned their wedding on the third Saturday of October.
Well, the groom is certainly from Tennessee. He grew up over in Dixon County. But he met his beautiful bride. She's just lovely. She actually grew up in Ohio.
Okay,
and,
well, forgive her.
He's 25 and he's a pilot. And he started out flying just the small general aviation commuter planes, you might say.
Hmm.
Prop planes, I don't know what you call them. I'm not a pilot, but now he can fly a jet. He's actually a instructor. He can teach other people how to fly a jet. So
Nice.
whereas most happy married couples drive off after the wedding,
They flew. Don't tell me they
they
flew.
flew off. I'll send you a picture of it. They absolutely did. The wedding and the reception was at the main hangar of the Dixon County Airport.
That's brilliant.
It was a beautiful setting. Of course, the weather was absolutely perfect, as you may recall from last Saturday evening.
Hmm.
And yes, they flew off instead of driving off. They flew off for their honeymoon down in Orange Beach, Alabama. So we were thankful to get to be a part of that. So, but
So did they get to tie cans and things to the back of the airplane?
no, I think the FAA overruled that entirely. But it was a nice sentiment nonetheless, and it's something that I won't soon forget. It was a beautiful wedding, beautiful weather, and again, throwing in the technology aspect of letting those interested parties be able to follow the UT Vols beat the Alabama Crimson Tide, that made it even better.
Yeah. Now, do people still tie cans to the back of cars after a wedding reception? I don't know that I've seen that in some
I haven't
time.
seen that done in a very long time. I still see,
Oh,
cars get decked out with shaving cream all over them and the windows soaked a little bit and just married written somehow, somewhere, sometime, maybe on a poster board or something. It was Heidi and I married in 2007. Actually, the day we got married is 07/07/07.
nice.
That way I'll never forget my anniversary.
That's right. Good
I
job.
said I would, because if you've met my wife, so you know she's unforgettable. But with that being said, my car was done up that way, but that's coming up on 18 years ago. So, we're getting
Congratulations.
with I don't really know if I see people do that anymore. And you can't throw rice any longer at weddings.
Birdseed.
Birdseed, or you light a candle, the Twizzlers or something or other. Yeah.
I like the sparklers, right?
Sparklers. I'm sorry, Twizzler.
No, today's modern day is to take the shoe polish is what we always wrote on the windows with.
Yes.
And now it's Venmo the bride and groom, right? Like
Right.
they put
Right.
their Venmo on the cars, which honestly I think is kind of brilliant, but it's getting a little overdone because it's Venmo the bachelorette, Venmo the graduate, Venmo the bride and groom. Everybody's putting their Venmos on their cars.
Well, it's certainly a 21st century way of contributing, getting a wedding present, as opposed to having to look on the gift registry, go to a department store, buy a card, get it wrapped or whatever. And that helps out a lot. But yes, ma'am, you Venmo a little bit of everything these days.
No, but I'm talking about even just on the cars as they're driving away,
Oh
for
yeah.
strangers to Venmo them, to buy them a drink or, just to send them happy greetings on their nuptials.
Well, I agree with you on that. I don't know that I've ever done that, because I don't think anybody wants to know my business that much on Venmo. But I will be speaking of a wedding, in 2 Saturdays from now, I'll be actually officiating at a wedding
Oh, nice.
for a young lady and her handsome groom to be. She is the daughter of the best friend that I have ever had. Her father is my best friend since 6th grade. He and I, another Generation X guy, great fella, retired Metropolitan Nashville police officer. And he is just a saint of a fella. And his precious little girl asked me would I consider doing their wedding, and I was honored to do it. And I want to make sure our viewers are clear. I am not a minister. I'm not a pastor. That's not why I'm able to do that. It actually came out of a change in state law in Tennessee in 2021 that allows me to do weddings.
What is that change in law?
Well, I had a gentleman call me, another friend of mine. He said, "Hey, I need you to be on standby if by chance you're allowed to do weddings." And I said, "Well, Tony, I don't know that I can." He goes, "Well, I thought maybe lawyers are empowered to do weddings." I said, "No, that's something that they don't give us the privilege of doing." I said, "But what's up? Why would you want me on standby?" He goes, "Well, I'm actually a long time, for the past 40 years, personal friend of the governor of Tennessee. He and I knew each other when we first got out
Oh,
of college. And I'm on his list that if he doesn't have something else he's got to do state government wise that day, he's going to officiate my little girl's wedding. But I got to have a backup in case the governor gets busy and can't make it." And I said, "Well, Tony, let me look and see." I said, "I've served town government before, so maybe being a former alderman, even though it was for just 3 months, would allow me to do that." Sometimes they do that in state code. So I quickly looked up the state law about who can perform the rites of matrimony in Tennessee. And just that same year, another official had been added to who could do weddings in Tennessee. And this follows judges or former judges, speakers of the House, speakers of the Senate, former county clerks. There's like 16 or 17 of them. But this one got added, I think, because of COVID, because I think they were trying to keep people out of the courthouses, frankly. They didn't want people to come there to get married. And it was, they included in, I guess it was April of 2021, they included notaries public may do the rites of matrimony. And I'm a notary.
Well, and see, I grew up in Florida, and I thought that that was always the rule down there, that a notary could officiate
And it
weddings
may
in
be.
Florida. I assumed it was everywhere. I didn't realize that that's relatively new to
It
Tennessee.
is. It's that new in our state. And so while I'm on the phone with my friend Tony, I say to him, I said, Tony, you're in luck, brother. I can be on standby. I actually can do a wedding. And so I ended up doing it. I had to do it. The governor unfortunately had to cancel on them. And then a year or two later, a young lady with whom I graduated high school with, she called me, wanted to know what I do her son and his bride-to-be's wedding down in my hometown. I was happy to do that. So I've done 2. This is going to be number 3 for me, and I'll see if I can't do these fine folks a good job or not. But I'm enjoying
Nice.
it. It's, you get to be a part of someone's special day. You couldn't ask for there's no higher honor than to be asked to do that. So I'm proud to do it.
Now, you do realize that you just said publicly that you are a notary public. And so that means anybody in our little town of Nolensville who listens to this podcast is going to now have your name, and they're going to know Russell Gill is a notary.
Russell Gill can marry us.
Well,
I'm
not
happy
even
to
just marriage. I'm just thinking about all the requests that I often see in the local town Facebook group of, I need a notary. Who's a notary? And now you just put it
Glad
out
to
there.
do that, Miss Amber. I have met so many of our fantastic neighbors, as you know, and as I hope your viewers will come to find out. We're almost 18,000 neighbors strong throughout Nolensville, but we're still a very small town. And everybody knows everybody. Everybody cares about everybody. And there are times that I see those same posts. Hey, is anybody a notary? And I'll always reply to them. I'll say, I'm happy to do it. That's part of, I think, both my responsibility when I took on the role of being a notary, and I get to do it. Part of my job, as you know, I'm a lawyer, and I do real estate closings. And so I'm able often I have to stamp a lot of deeds, and a lot of things have to be signed by folks under oath. I just think it's an obligation. It's a privilege. So I've had many folks show up at my doorstep at 8:30 at night because I'm sorry, but my kid wants to go on this school trip, but he didn't bring me home the permission slip until this afternoon, and this trip's in the morning. Can I bother you? And I'm like, sure, come on. So you're right. I have just invited myself to get messages all across Nolensville to notarize something.
That's right.
Happy to help my neighbors when I'm home.
Good to know it. I'm gonna make a note of that myself, because it's rare I need a notary, but when I do, I don't have to run down the road to Going Postal or wherever I've been doing it. I'll be like, call
We can
Russell.
actually do it online now too. There are documents. You may not know this, but I'm what you call a RON, RON, a remote online notary. We can.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's been around since the year before the pandemic hit. I believe 2019. Tennessee was one state number 6 or 7 to allow remote online notaries, and I am one. And it's become a really great tool and instrument that we use in my business to be able to do closings online. So I can help you online if you need me to.
That's awesome, Russell. Great to hear. So earlier, you and I were talking about you having the opportunity recently to relive a small piece of your childhood by going to a concert with a bunch of old high school friends. Tell me about that concert.
Amber, this one is going to go down in the Hall of Fame as one of the best, most fun occasions of my life. My high school graduating class in Waverly, Tennessee was 187 people strong, and we graduated in 1987. So it's pretty easy to remember how many people were in my class, but we all started, most of us, kindergarten together and worked our way all the way up to 12th grade. And when we went to 9th grade, we actually merged with another school from down in New Johnsonville called Lakeview. But we were all together. We were all family. And we all still kept in touch after high school in so many large ways. But in 2016, we had one of our classmates pass away, which we've had way too many of our classmates do that. It's heartbreaking if you look at the numbers. But this particular classmate, we all gathered for his funeral. And when we did, we thought we should have stayed in contact both with one another, but most importantly, him, because he had lived a solitary life, unfortunately, it sounded like. But I gave a eulogy at his funeral. I was honored to do so. We all went out to eat after the funeral at the local Mexican restaurant in Waverly, which back in the 80s was the Hardee's restaurant. But we were all talking about how we need to see each other more often than just perhaps every 5-year intervals whenever you have class reunions. And we began meeting up typically once a quarter to have dinner. And we would do it in Humphreys County, Dixon County. We'd come to Nashville to catch as many people as we could. And we would have a pretty good sampling of folks. Sometimes we have 2 or 3 of the same folks, but people who couldn't show up at the last one would come to the next one. And it really worked out well. And I'll say this, Facebook, our private page on that for our class helped foster that level of connection. And I really appreciated that. And we've stayed very strong, even through the COVID year. We still met up using a tool similar to this. We still kept together. But with that being said, for one of our quarterly events in 2022, I went to a gentleman that I know who has a relationship with another party who has a suite at Bridgestone Arena. And I knew that the man who rented the suite was notorious, if you will, for not often using it. He would get it, keep it, and sometimes he would go to concerts or hockey games. Sometimes he wouldn't. But my friend told me, he goes to them. He sits in that suite all the time when he wants to go to the Predators game. So it works out really well for him. So I went to my friend and I said, I've got to do what our mothers taught us never to do. I need to impose upon you. I need to impose upon our friendship. I said, would you mind on my behalf asking your friend, your golfing buddy who has the keys to the suite, would he lease that suite out to me for the night? Because what I'd like to do is have a small class reunion in it for the Bon Jovi concert. Bon Jovi sang my class's song, Never Say Goodbye. Of course, their Slippery When Wet album came out in 1986, right as our senior year got underway, so we know all the great songs off of that. And he said, let me ask, I'm playing golf with him tomorrow. And so the next day he did exactly as he promised me he did. He called me back a night or two later. He said, Russell, I have really bad news. And I said, no, you don't. It's okay, buddy. I appreciate you just being friends enough with me to even go out on a limb and offer to do me a favor. And he says, Russell, and I could almost see him doing this through the phone. He says, if you will hold back and somehow control your natural temperament, which is to talk and just listen for a minute. What I mean by bad news is he will not rent it to you. He won't sublet it to you for the night. He wants to give it to you. If you'll give me an email address, I've got 20 free tickets I need to email over to you. And so we went through and tried to find, folks that we knew could come and be a part of it. And I believe it was back on April the 30th, Saturday night, April the 30th. 2022, and the concert was fantastic. The environment was great. Of course, there's a lot of Gen X people there, Amber.
Of course, it was probably all Gen X.
It was, and we were all singing loudly. As far as my crowd, we all wore some T-shirts. I believe I had them made at a local T-shirt factory. You may have heard of it. It's called the
Nesting Project.
Yeah. The Nesting Project made some T-shirts for me that said WCHS Class of '87 on them with our old Tiger logo. And so we wore them all together that night. And then we made a big picture outside of the suite. And it was just a wonderful evening and a lot of fun. I don't know that we'll ever get to have that kind of fun again. I think maybe John Bon Jovi's voice may be giving out on him now. Yeah. But it was just a lot of fun reminding ourselves what it was like to be young together. And hearing those songs certainly brought back some great memories.
I bet. That sounds amazing. And nestingproject.com. Anybody needs custom shirts, they're a great place. Custom stationery, good friend of ours. She's great.
I can actually say, Amber, she'd made those. You're talking about going to get phone calls about being a notary. I hope she gets some phone calls off this because the template for those T-shirts that she made for me were actually made almost a year before that. You may recall hearing in our part of the world in 2021, Waverly suffered a massive flood.
Oh, yeah.
In August of 2021. And we had a fundraiser. The Tennessee Titans allowed my high school's football team to use the Titan Stadium to hold their homecoming football game because our stadium was totally
nice.
And I called over to the Nesting Project. I said, look, I got like a week's turnaround time. I need to get some T-shirts printed up for my class, as well as maybe sell to raise some money for classmates. We had 4 classmates in the class of '87 that had fallen victim to the flood. And we wanted to give them some money. And so they did those T-shirts for me. And then they had the template available on the short when I needed them for the concert too. So good job, Nesting Project.
That's right. They are great. And what I love about them, not to turn this into an advertisement for Nesting Project, but what I absolutely love about Nesting Project is if you just need a single shirt for a single occasion, you send them the design, they print you your single shirt. Or if you don't have it designed, you can tell them the concept, they'll design it. and print your shirt. One great example is last year for Halloween, I dressed up as Taylor Swift and made my boyfriend Kevin dress up as, Mr. Kelsey. And so I had them print me my shirt that said "In My Kelsey Era," and then for fun on his, instead of just having 87, we had it printed Mr. Pfizer, because that was what what's his name from the Jets, Aaron Rodgers,
Yes.
would refer to Travis Kelsey as. So we played with that joke as well, and it was great. Like, yeah, we want these 2 shirts, print them up, and quick and easy and great.
Well, as a takeoff on our last name, my wife and I dressed up as Gilligan's Island.
Ha, that's funny.
She was Gilligan, I was the skipper.
That's cute.
And it worked. It worked. So
Gilligan's Island. Oh my gosh, I was obsessed with that show as a child.
And we can speak to all of our other Generation X brothers and sisters. It most certainly came on 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon every day after school. And that's what we watched when we got home from school. When at Gilligan's Island, here's the question, Amber. Would you prefer the Munsters or Addams Family?
Addams Family, 100%.
Well, I think I was more of a fan of the Munsters when I was
Really?
But as I gotten older, I may prefer the Addams Family a little bit more. But they too, either one, they would swap them out. One station or the other would seem like would have it on after school. So I was just trying to go through my mind. You just triggered that thought process about what did we watch after school. And Gilligan's Island was in there, the Brady Bunch, either the Munsters or the Addams Family seemed to be a part of the fair. And that was always on when we were kids in elementary school or junior high, it seemed like.
I was also a latchkey kid. Do you remember when that term was coined?
It was our generation. It was our generation because parents were working. And
I was a latchkey kid, and so I would come home after school, no parents there. So I was home alone or with my brothers for hours on end. And so we watched a lot of TV. And then that meant, like, when school was out, you're home all day long without parents. And I remember just watching hours and hours of TV, but it would be things like the Beverly Hillbillies.
Yes.
Loved them. What was the show that Zsa Zsa Gabor was on?
Well, that's Green Acres, I believe.
Green Acres, yes.
It was not Zsa Zsa, it was her sister. It was Ava.
Ava Gabor, yes.
Ava Gabor, yes.
Green Acres.
That was standard summertime fare as well to watch.
I watched a lot of Beverly Hillbillies and a lot of Green Acres.
Yes, ma'am. That's what our generation grew. And now you can call it up anytime you want on YouTube or any other streaming service, I guess. It doesn't have the same cachet it might have had when we were kids.
So, Russell, were you born and raised in Nashville or Middle Tennessee, Waverly area?
I was born in Humphreys County, which Waverly is the county seat, and born at the small hospital that is still standing and Waverly still being in use. I'm actually the youngest of 8 children.
Wow.
I am different from our Generation X family in this very real fact. My parents are part of the greatest generation. My father fought in World War II.
Oh, wow.
I'm the youngest, as I said, of their 8 kids. I have a sister who is 22 years older than I am.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. In fact, it was a little strange growing up. My sisters, my 2 oldest sisters, my oldest brother, they were more along the same ages as my counterparts and best friends' mom and dad growing up. It was weird, to be candid with you. But I didn't know any better. That's just the way it was. And they were sisters. They weren't parents. But mother and daddy started having children in 1947 when he got home from World War II. And they didn't quit. So they got it right in 69.
Nice.
And by the way, when I say that, my siblings get really irritated. They love their baby brother and they put up with a lot out of me. But that joke, they could really they don't need to hear that whenever.
And what was your relationship like with those siblings that you had such a huge age gap with? Like, I think of my own children, and my daughters are 10 and 12 years older than my son. And he basically feels like an only child. One, because there was only so many years before they were both out of the house. And then it's just him around here. And so I'm just curious, your age gap between you and your older siblings is quite significant.
Right.
Like, your 22 years older sister could have been your mother.
It could have been, and she treated me like her kid more often than not. My relationship with all of my older siblings is as strong as welded steel.
That's awesome.
All 8 of us are very close. All of us love, support, take care of each other, and I couldn't ask for a better family. I was raised by the best. I was petted very much, being the baby. And I used to get mad about that term. In fact, sometimes my older brothers would say, "Oh, he's just the baby. Don't make him mad. He might cry." When you're a little guy, that makes you mad 'cause it's a term of derision, right?
Hmm.
And especially, mama could compound it by saying, "There's my baby boy." I'm like, "Oh, I'm the baby." Now it's a term of honor, and I love it. And I'm happy to be their baby brother. And no, my elder siblings took care of me. They loved me. They took me places, taught me a lot of things. I got to go places that maybe some other kids didn't get to go. Uh, my sister Helen, who has been a mother figure to all of us, she didn't have children of her own, and she and her husband George were like second parents to me in so many ways. As a matter of fact, my brother-in-law George, who's now deceased, unfortunately, the world was robbed of a fantastic man that he was, and ever since the word early onset dementia took him from us in
Oh,
the
man.
early 70s. But George made such a huge impact on my life that whenever my son was on his way and we knew we were going to have a baby boy, we announced at dinner one day when we were down home that we were going to name our son Taylor, because that was George and Helen's surname. My brother-in-law's last name is Taylor. And so that's why my son has the name he does. And it's just a way for me to say to my brother-in-law, "Hey, you married my sister. You got a whole passel of brothers and sisters-in-law to put up with, and sisters-in-law, I should say. And you were great to me as a guy. Thank you. Thanks for fixing my car. Thanks for giving me money as a teenager. Thanks for just being a real man to me. Thanks for carving my Pinewood Derby car, for Pete's sake."
Yeah.
They were very good to me. I mean, the first R-rated movie I ever saw was with my older brother, Brian. We went to see Stripes at the drive-in movie theater. He swore me to secrecy. He said, "Now, don't you go home and tell mama that I took you to see an R-rated movie. You got it." I
Nice.
knew to keep quiet about it, or I wouldn't get to go do it again.
That's right.
So everybody from Gen X is going to remember the movie Stripes, for Pete's sake. But I think I was 13 when it came out, and it was pretty exciting to get to see, by the way. But so no, my family and I are to this day, we're very strong and very tight, and I'm thankful for everything that they are to me, and I love them dearly.
That's amazing. So, having been in this area for quite some time, Nashville, as you know, has grown insanely. It quickly became the it city, still is riding the it city, I believe. But
Yes.
how you being able to see it change from the very beginning before anybody even really cared much about Nashville to now, what are your thoughts? What do you remember from back in the day before it became the it city? What do you miss about those days? Or maybe you don't miss anything about those days. Maybe you love the growth.
Well, I remember Nashville, of course, was the big city when I was a kid growing up in Humphreys County. And
Hmm.
so when you got to go to the big city, Nashville was the big city we went to. When you watched TV news, it was out of Nashville. So I knew all the news anchors from channels 2, 4, and 5. Interesting enough, I remember whenever I was just a little guy, the big deal when channels 2 and channels 8 swapped. The ABC station used to be channel 8 in Nashville, and the PBS station
Mm.
used to be channel 2, but then they swapped out, and for whatever reason, and I remember when that change happened. But so that's where we got our news. That was the newspapers came from Nashville. And when you would go to do something that you only could do in the big city, like eat at Shoney's, you came to Nashville. That was the thing. Or maybe buy school clothes once a year. You come to Nashville if you couldn't buy them in Waverly or Dixon. Uh, I ended up living in Nashville full time when I was 18, when I went to Belmont College, which is now known as Belmont University. But I am a member of the final graduating class of an institution which is known just as Belmont College. And that's really my best point of reference for how Nashville has grown, starting in 1987 to where we find ourselves now in 2024. I can recall when the only place to see a concert in Nashville, this is more my high school days before college, but high school was the Municipal Auditorium.
Oh, yeah.
That's where all the acts would come to, or they would end up at the Murphy Center in Murfreesboro. But that was it. We did not have an amphitheater at that time. We certainly didn't have the downtown arena. But
Mm-mm.
when I started college, it seemed like maybe the year before I started, Starwood Amphitheater opened up over on Murfreesboro Road, and that's where some of the bigger acts would go, at least in the spring and summertime. And that was a big hit. But that eventually phased out. Once the arena opened up, it started getting some of that business, and I guess Starwood just wasn't financially viable any longer. Now it's just a big old parking lot over there. what I've seen from when I started living in Nashville as a college student and then working in Nashville 4 years later, I used to drive to downtown every day. I drove to downtown to work from 1991 until year 2016. And I will say this, I had to go to downtown Nashville in the morning about 3 weeks ago. And I could not imagine driving in that traffic all day, every day, twice a day. I would say that the biggest change in Nashville in my time living here has got to be the traffic. And I don't think we build enough roads to handle it. We're probably behind the eight ball when it comes to some sort of mass transit solution.
Oh, yeah.
And I know it's a regional problem. We are the it city. People want to live here. We don't have a state income tax. We have a mild climate. I know it's going to get cold here in just a couple of months, but overall, our climate is pretty daggum good. And once you live here for a while, you get used to the humidity in the summertime. But or you thank God for William Carrier, who created the air conditioner. I think his name was William, but I know his last name was Carrier, who created the air conditioner. But I would certainly say the biggest challenge that we have regionally, and the biggest change I've seen in Nashville for sure, is traffic. You cannot go to downtown and it look the same way twice, 1 month after another. There is another building going up in downtown Nashville, and it's astonishing how we have truly gone. Amber, I recall when I was living in an apartment over off Edmondson Pike. I was a kid, right out of college, working for the state of Tennessee, and I was about ready to go to law school, I think. And the news came on that the owner of the Houston Oilers was considering relocating his franchise to Nashville. And I think I was probably like 99% of the rest of Nashvillians. We thought, yeah, we're getting used again, because we'd been used by the Minnesota Timberwolves earlier that year, I believe, to get them a new arena. And more recently than that, in between it, the Devils, the New Jersey Devils hockey team, had played Nashville and left us at the altar in hopes that we were going to get a professional franchise of some sort. And so I just figured, well, here we go again. And there's no way the Oilers are moving out of Houston, that this is just a play to get a new stadium. Thankfully, I was very wrong about that. And indeed, the Oilers did move to Nashville, and now they're our beloved Titans. And I believe they've been here for 25 years. One of the biggest changes that I can tell anybody from being a Middle Tennessee native about the change in our region, the change in our perspective, the change in our area, is we never viewed ourselves in this region, the metropolitan Nashville region, the Middle Tennessee region, or even our state, as big time, as pro material. We didn't have a pro team. And then, of course, we got the Predators. The Predators were here about the same time. We got awarded that franchise in 97, 98. They may technically have gotten here before the Oilers did. I don't remember. But all that to say is we suddenly found ourselves with not one, but two professional sports franchises. And somehow that gave us the imprimatur of being a big city town, that we were on the level with Atlanta's now, and maybe even the Charlottes, and maybe we'd even outpaced Charlotte. But we were on our way, and I will say that mentality took hold. And I think with the NFL, there's only 32 franchises out there, and I don't the Raiders moved to Vegas 2 years ago, and I don't know anybody's on the move anytime soon, but we got it. I'm happy about it, even though they didn't win on Sunday, and they haven't won. I think they've won 7 games out of the past 30 they've played, as the stat I saw. That'll have to be corrected. I don't remember, but we haven't won that many in the past 3 years. But they're still our team. But most importantly, the way that we as a region started seeing value in ourselves and found something common to be excited about, that has certainly been a change in the Nashville area over the past 30 years.
Yeah. And now we have also professional soccer.
Yes, ma'am.
We just need a baseball team and a basketball team.
Yeah. I should have mentioned soccer, because that is equally as important to a number of people in our community, and it has taken off really well. I'm happy we've got the Nashville Soccer Club. Now, I'm not a soccer fan myself, but I know a lot of friends. We have some folks to go to church with that they won't miss a game, and I'm happy about that. So yes, we've moved up. We continue to progress, and I don't know and I don't want to put sports on too high of a pedestal, but I remember that we have seen some relocations in the corporate world in the past 15 years that benefited our community, Nissan being one of them. Nissan moved from Gardena, California to Nashville in 2006 and built that massive headquarters complex over here in Franklin off McEwen Drive. We've been blessed as a result of that. So perhaps Nashville's getting the notoriety for being the city, all the economic benefits that come with being in a state with a low tax base and specifically a no state income tax. And we have available land. too. We have developable land that helps us as well. And I think another thing we always want to focus on too, we've got a really good, we got great down to earth people that live and work here. We got folks that are willing to work for a living, and we've
And
had
low property taxes.
low property taxes. We've got people that are educated and hardworking. We've got great skill set people. So yeah, that's that. But nonetheless, to sum it all up, you asked me what time it was, and I told you how to build a clock there, Amber. I think probably in the Nashville region, besides traffic being the proof of the pudding as far as our growth, it's actually been the mentality of how we see ourselves. We see ourselves as competitors to any city, not just in our nation, but perhaps in the world.
And so back to the subject of sports.
Mhm.
Did you play sports as a child?
I played baseball 1 year, and then I
Hmm.
played a whole lot of front yard football.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, I didn't play much sports as a kid, but one thing I don't remember as a kid when we were growing up, and maybe this is just was my experience, maybe it was different than I experienced it, but today I see through my own children and friends' children's and all of that, sports, youth sports are so competitive and so many travel teams and competitive teams. I don't remember anything beyond school teams growing up. Did we have in Generation X the travel teams and competitive teams, or is this
Not
something
that I recall.
newer? Okay, so it's not
We would
just
have.
me.
It seemed like we would have for Little League baseball. I think it was called Babe Ruth Baseball League. And that was in the springtime, perhaps, and it didn't. It never lasted into the summer because, for one thing, it was just too darn hot. Maybe in the early summer, but I mean, you didn't play for long, and maybe into June. But no, beyond that, no, there was. I don't recall travel ball
Yeah.
being a big thing. If there was, there may have been some softball that might have gone on. But other than that, I don't have. And of course, I grew up in a county. Fewer. We have more people in the town of Nolensville than we're in across the entire county I grew up in.
Yeah.
We have 18,000 people total in Humphreys County, so we may not have had necessarily the young people population to have enough teams to do that sort of thing. But I take your point, and I agree that I don't recall travel ball and all those things being. If it was emerging right when you and I were getting out of the age group to participate in it.
Yeah, or maybe it was happening in other parts of the or other parts of the country where I grew up in Florida, you grew up in Tennessee. Maybe it wasn't something in the South at the time until, now, obviously. But now it's such a big thing. Your kids are all competing for spots on competitive teams, and then all the money us parents are shelling out, and all the travel. And my girls did competitive gymnastics and competitive cheer, and my son plays football and basketball, and all of the sports.
I did. I wished I could tell you that I had an athletic bone in my body. I do not. I'm so thankful that both of our children have inherited their mother's ability to both be graceful, talented, athletic, intelligent, and handsome for my son and beautiful for my daughter. They don't take after me at all. I'm thankful for that. The more they
Nice.
take after their mother, the better. But I wasn't very athletic. I enjoyed sports. I really enjoyed football. I was a Dallas Cowboys fan growing up. 3 straight NFC championship games in the early 80s that we lost. And I think I probably cried after every one of them. And I was in my early teenage years and I still cried over football. But with that being said, what I found for my extracurricular activity of choice and what helped me grow as a young man when I became a teenager were the Boy Scouts.
Yeah.
There was a young dentist in my hometown who, the town I grew up in is on the east side of Humphreys County, it's McEwen. So Waverly County seat, that's where I went to school. But in our town of McEwen, a young dentist set up shop there, and he was an Eagle Scout, and he decided to be a scoutmaster. And they met 1 block from where my house was, so it was easy for me to get to. By this point, my father had passed away, and I didn't really want to put any extra pressure on my mother to have to drive me somewhere all the time, take me places. And although she would have
Hmm.
done, by the way, my mother would have driven me here to the equator to do anything that I
Hmm.
needed or wanted. My mother was the best thing it's the best thing I ever knew of, the best mother I could have ever dreamed of. And I thank God for her every day. But I still didn't want to put extra pressure on her after working all day long. And so me being able to just ride my bike or just walk up a block, for Pete's sake, to go to the Scouts was convenient. And then I got into it, and it was something that I really enjoyed. And it helped turn me into a patriot in so many ways. My father already laid the groundwork for that, but it helped me understand a lot about the outdoors that I was certainly exposed to by my family. I wasn't deprived of those opportunities, but it accentuated. I've hiked, and I know it might be tough thinking about me doing it now, Amber, at 55 and the condition I'm in, but I will say this: I have hiked 72 miles in the mountains of northeast New Mexico at a scout reservation called Philmont. I did that back in 1983, and that was a great memory of mine. And my mom made sure I got to go do that. How she
Nice.
afforded it, I'll never know, but I did it. I got to do it as a teenager, but I loved it. And to this day, I'm more than thankful that I can say I too am an Eagle Scout.
Very nice. That's awesome. So, Russell, not that we're talking politics here, but we do have an election coming up,
Yes, ma'am.
and not to talk about the presidential election at all. It just will not go there. But we also have a local election here in Nolensville coming up, and you happen to be running for commissioner.
Yes, ma'am.
One of the things I'm very excited about is that Nolensville has grown so significantly to the point that we actually have competitive elections now. And we have 3 commissioner seats that are open for this election season. And I think we have 6 candidates. Is that correct? We
That's
have
right.
6
That's right.
candidates
Mhm.
running for those 3 seats. Now, there was a time when there would be no competition whatsoever, and there'd be a single person on the ballot. Or if there was any competition, there just weren't enough people who really cared to get involved in the issues, show up at town hall, listen to the meetings, all of that. But now we actually have a town of so much growth and so much care that the citizens want to know who is serving the town the best and who are the best people to put in those positions to serve the town. One thing that I wanted to talk about that really just applies here locally, obviously, was when we had a mayoral race a few years back. Gosh, how long ago was that now? Was that
That was in 2018,
2018?
3 years ago.
Yeah. So for those of you in Nolensville listening to this that may not know the little bit of history here, let's go over a brief history lesson. So at the time we had an incumbent mayor who was running for re-election, Jimmy Alexander, may he rest in peace. And there was another candidate on the ballot as well. Well, who knows what happened behind the scenes? I have my own thoughts on how it came to be. Here we were again with a non-competitive election. Jimmy Alexander was a shoo-in because there was nobody competing against him. He had already served 2 consecutive terms. This would be his 3rd term. There was a good number of us in town who just felt it was time for Jimmy to retire. He served his time. I like to think of the saying, what got us here. Wait, I already forgot my own saying that I like. But basically, what got us here isn't going to get us to the next place, right? So Jimmy Alexander, his time was well served. He did great things for Nolensville. He got us to the point that we were. But now it's time to bring in some new blood, some new ideas, and take the town to the next place, because the town was experiencing explosive growth. This sleepy little town was just exploding. And I did not feel that he was the right person to oversee that growth. And I know I wasn't alone. But so here we were in a position suddenly that we had an incumbent that many of us did not feel was the right person, but it was too late to put anybody else on the ballot. So Russell, you stepped up because you felt the same and said, you know what, I'm going to run as a write-in. It's too late for me to put my name on the ballot. I was intending to run anyways. And so you ran an amazing write-in campaign. I don't know how you did it, because it's extremely challenging to be a write-in candidate. You ran such a strong campaign, did so much marketing, so much promotion, got your name out there, and you narrowly lost.
Yes.
It was a narrow, it was a narrow loss, which is unbelievable for a write-in candidate. And to me, that spoke volumes for what the town of Nolensville wanted. And I think the majority of us were aligned with what I was thinking, what you were thinking, what a lot of us were thinking, is that we need new blood in the role in there to move us forward. So you were very gracious, loser.
Well, hopefully, it's we're trying to teach our children how to behave, right? And so I had my son looking at me that night. He was as sad as could be, a little 8-year-old guy at that time.
Oh.
But I remember that night well, election night, and it was the 30th anniversary of the election of President George H.W. Bush in 1988. He had been our vice president. He's been elected. And the night he got elected president in 1988, he said that the 4 most majestic words that a democracy has to offer are the people have spoken. And we respect what the people say at the ballot box. And whether we win or whether we lose, we respect that. And so I did that night, and I will again in, I guess, 15 days from where we're taping this right now. I'll respect it again, whatever the answer may be. But yes, ma'am. Thank you for recalling my write-in campaign. That was singularly one of the more fun things we've ever done in our life. I rather enjoyed it. I would have wished we could have won, but we didn't. Hopefully, we did maybe change the trajectory of some town policies and some behaviors around town. I don't know. I really enjoyed it because it was a positive campaign about some issues. I think we talked about the fire department, how we need
Oh, yeah.
that was a big one for us. And now we have a full-time fire department in Nolensville, Tennessee, and I'm thankful about that. I revisit those times every now and again, and I smile about them. It was a great experience. And, you mentioned Mayor Alexander. He and I actually became friends, both during the campaign and thereafter. And one of the last times I got to visit with him, before he passed away, he and I were sitting at the local coffee shop, Mama's Java, just talking as friends, not politics, not town intrigue, anything like that, but just as evidence of the fact that, first off, he was my elder and I respected him as such. And he had served our town remarkably well for a very long time, both as an alderman first and then as a mayor. And I wanted to be respectful of that service. But when I last saw him, I just wanted to be respectful to him as a person. And we had a great talk, and I learned something about him I did not know. Earlier in this podcast, when I mentioned to you that I come from a family of 8, I'm the youngest of 8, I could see your eyes like, wow, that you don't hear that much anymore, do you? You don't hear people with big families. Well, for whatever reason, Mayor Alexander and I got to talking about it as well. I think he'd asked me how my family was doing. He was checking in on, this was after the flood in Waverly, and he was concerned about them. And I had to tell him my brother's house got flooded down there. And I just told him how it's my oldest brother out of the 8 of us. And he says to me, Russell, I'm the oldest of 8. I'm the eldest of 8 as well. And I never knew that. So he and I were from the same size families, just on opposite ends of the spectrum. So I'm glad I got to know him as a person. And now, yes, ma'am, you're correct. This time I am on the ballot, which
congratulations.
I hope will bring about better results in every sense of the word. And we're going to try to continue. As we sit here taping this tonight, we've got 15 more days before the election is upon us. But yes, ma'am, I'm pleased. The late Senator Howard H. Baker Jr., who served Tennessee remarkably well for nearly 20 years. I think this quote came from his father, but he was one that used it more often, not quoting his father. He said, be careful. And this is a paraphrase. I'm not going to get it right, but it's certainly Howard Baker's sentiments. He says, be careful who you disagree with. They might just be right. And so that's how I'm going to be approaching the remainder of this campaign. And I have looked at it thus far. And if by chance I happen to be one of the top 3 vote getters, and therefore I'm elected to the Nolensville Board of Commissioners, I will go into it with that mindset that I look forward to listening and learning from my colleagues and from all interested parties, and trying to understand the issues, because they might be right and I might be wrong. And I'm happy if that's the case. I'm happy to say so. But so I'm going to try to apply the Howard Baker rule of thumb about approaching my decisions on issues going forward for the next 4 years.
Well, Russell Gill, not that my endorsement does anything for you, but you definitely have my vote and my endorsement. I'm all about Gill for the Ville.
We still have some of those T-shirts. I think those 2 were made at the Nesting Project. But my wife is a big fan of the Gill for the Ville T-shirts. And I'm convinced that catchphrase alone was worth 500 of the votes that we got back in 2008.
Nice.
Hey, there was a fun story. We just got done with the Broken Wheel Festival this past week, and that you were a big part of. Everybody, you may or may not remember this story, but when we were at the Broken Wheel Festival in 2018 for my campaign, my mayoral campaign, we were giving out balloons, helium-filled balloons to all the kids that said, "Write in Russell Gill for mayor," and all the kids loved it. It was a great thing to give out. Free balloons, right? Of course, somebody lets go of a balloon and it gets picked up in the jet stream.
Oh, no.
All right, so that's Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening. I get up and go to church the next morning. I come home and sitting at my computer, or maybe on my phone, I don't recall where, but I get a Facebook message from a lady in West Virginia.
What?
With a picture of one of my balloons.
No way.
And she says, we are in West Virginia, and my husband and I were standing outside speaking with someone in our driveway, and out of the sky fell this balloon And I looked at it and I Googled your name and found out you're in Nolensville, Tennessee. And I found your Facebook page and thought I'd let you know we had, and she sent me a picture of my balloon that made its way to West Virginia overnight due to the jet stream.
I think you need to test that again and release a balloon this election season, but maybe like write on the balloon so they know how to get a hold of you in case they aren't savvy enough to Google you. And
Right.
let's see where this one winds up. Does it go farther? Does it go a different direction?
If it does, maybe it'll portend a victory at the ballot box here in 2 weeks. I don't know. But
Yeah,
whatever comes our way, I'll say this, Amber. We have 5 great candidates that I'm running alongside of. I'm not running against them. And whenever we've seen each other here at the local polling place for early voting, it's been a lot of fun getting to know them as people. I knew a couple of them already, but several of them I did not know very well at all. But it's been a privilege to get to know them. And whomever Nolensville elects, I think we're going to be in good shape for the next 4 years. And I'm thankful if I get to be one of those 3 people. I'm happy to serve our town if it comes that way. If I don't get elected, it'll be on me. I didn't work hard enough at it if that's the case, but I will be nonetheless very thankful for all the support that has come my way and do my best to find another way to serve our town.
Well, Russell, it's been such a pleasure having you on the podcast. I love hearing about your early days in Middle Tennessee before it became what it did.
Yes,
and I
ma'am.
agree with you. We are definitely behind the 8 ball on a transportation solution here, and God help us. I hope we figure that out. And hopefully we figure out mass transportation in Nolensville before that ever becomes a problem down here.
Yes,
We're a
ma'am.
long ways off from needing it, but at some point we may need to be open-minded to that as well. But Russell, thanks again for joining us here on the Feral Ones podcast. Best of luck to you in your campaign, and I'll be seeing you around town.
Thank you for having me, Amber.
Thanks, Russell.
Thank you for listening to the Feral Ones podcast. Don't forget to smash the like and follow button. Have a Feral Gen X story to share? Email us at theferalonespodcast@gmail.com. You may just hear your story on the next podcast episode. Until next time, friends, stay feral.